Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon or good morning or good evening, depending on where you're listening to us from. Very happy to have you here, a few in person, but mostly virtual, to our Clean Tech conference today. It's a conference with a particular focus, I'm sure you know. It's on the deployment of innovation, the deployment of technologies on the ground in the market. And as you also, I'm sure you know, this takes place as a virtual side event to our participation in the COP26 conference in Glasgow. Conference has just started, so the outcome is still uncertain, but we already had a flurry of declaration, commitments, attempts by leaders to demonstrate that we are all committed to the key objective of this conference, which is to limit the global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius maximum. And we will need a lot of help for that, and in particular, we will need a lot of innovation. That's why this event, I think, is particularly topical. And the leaders already devoted a full day to innovation in Glasgow. We need to achieve our objective with the technologies that we have. Our strategy is based on the technologies that we know, but many of these technologies need improvement. They need to be refined, they need to be perfected, and they need to be brought to the market. And no innovation is too big or too small for our needs. We have in the Commission tried to set up new instruments to support innovators in bringing their ideas, their innovation to the market. The Innovation Fund is now our instrument of choice, financed with the income of the emission trading system. At today's prices, is worth well above 25 billion euros over 10 years, and we have grander ideas in that respect. In the proposal that we have made to our legislators, if they are all accepted, we might even see a doubling of this fund. So it's a key tool for us to support innovators, and we have started the work. That's why we're here today. We have launched a first call for proposals and completed it, and we will soon award the decisions. We have launched a second one, but in the meantime, we have created a window for smaller projects which may be small in size, may be small in the amount of money that they require, but they're not small in their importance. Because around each big plant, each big initiative, there is a multiplicity of initiatives, a multiplicity of technologies or individual inventions that are required to make the whole thing work. And today, we are here to welcome three of those who have won the prize of Best Innovators under the Innovation Fund. We will have another about 30 or more grant agreements to be signed under this small project window, and they're scattered all over Europe. I think one thing is very clear. Europe is not short of innovators. Europe is short of finance for innovators. And that's why we're all here, that's why we're all interested. We want to correct this. We will also have, after the signature of these three grants agreements, a conversation with some experts on where are we going next on financing the deployment of clean tech. But for the moment, the first part of this event is devoted to those who represent today with us this multiplicity of innovators in Europe whom we need and whom we're very happy to see continue to flourish and come up with new technologies and new ideas. So let me give the floor to another key person in our system, Dirk Beckers, the director of the Climate Innovation and Executive Agency, who is actually managing all this on the ground and helping us making it happen. Dirk, over to you.
My side as well to all of you. It's a pleasure really to be here and to have the opportunity to be at the signing event in the framework of COP26. And I would say thanks to the good cooperation as well with DG Klima, so thank you, Mauro. I think we've been able to speed up these things, and of course, I would like already to give a warm welcome to the representatives of the projects for which we will be signing today, and who have been quite fast indeed in getting everything arranged so that we can sign today. Now, I think that this event could not be more timely, because with the parties who are negotiating now in COP26, how we can fight against climate change, I think the fact that we are signing this today and that we're demonstrating that we're delivering concretely investments that are leading to the solid reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, I think that's a good thing to do them together. So from our side, Cinia, we have a long track record of financing infrastructure innovation projects, but the Innovation Fund is quite new, and so we are now ready to extend our activities to support deployment innovation into business practice at commercial scale. So I'm as well very proud to welcome, I would say, the 3 representatives here of the very first Innovation Fund project. So it's really the very, very first one. So I would call them pioneers on the Innovation Fund. And so who will demonstrate that through innovation, we can bring low carbon solutions already today into the market across various countries. And we have examples from different countries. So without any further ado, I would like maybe to introduce them and ask them to present themselves. So I will start from my left-hand side, and then we have Edda Aradottir, who's CEO of CarpFix and representative of the Silverstone project from Iceland. So Edda, if you could maybe present yourself a bit and your project in a few minutes, that would be appreciated.
Yes, thank you. And let me just start by saying that it's a true honor to participate in this event and to be one of the first 3 projects to be awarded a grant from the Innovation Fund. I'm Edda, the CEO of CarpFix, as has already been said. And what we in CarpFix do is we've spent the past 15 years or so on developing an innovative carbon capture and mineral storage technology that turns captured CO2 into stone underground in less than 2 years. And the technology, it involves, firstly, dissolving CO2 in water. So basically, we create a soda water of sorts. And this we inject into porous basaltic rocks, where it forms rapidly stable carbonate minerals. And this is where the name of the Silverstone projects come from, because the most abundant mineral that forms and transforms the captured carbon into minerals is called Silverstone in Icelandic. And I have a piece of this beautiful mineral formation here with me. Typically, we do not form these nice crystals or these big crystals when we inject, but rather you can see embedded in the basalt that we inject into, we have sort of these nice sparkling silverstone pieces embedded in the gray basalt. And this process, permanently storing CO2 in minerals underground and in the bedrock underneath us, it is an imitation and acceleration of a process that's already part of the natural carbon cycle on Earth. And actually, the bedrock underneath us is already providing us with by far the largest carbon reservoir on Earth. Now, the Silverstone project itself is located at the Hellisheiði geothermal power plant in Iceland, which is owned and operated by On Power, our partner in the Silverstone project. And there, in this project, we will bring carbon capture and mineral storage at the power plant to full scale. And this will result in near zero emission production of heat and electricity at the plant. The replication potential of the project is tremendous, and it's not limited to geothermal, even though we are implementing the technology in this sector in this particular project, because the CarpFix technology is adaptable to other types of power plants, as well as to several hard-to-abate sectors, including steel, cement, and ammonia. And receiving this generous support from the Innovation Fund for the Silverstone project is a great honor for a young climate tech company like CarpFix, and the support will allow us to demonstrate that our technology has an important role to play in global climate action, as the technology is both economical and environmentally friendly, and we have developed a solution that can have real impact on climate. brief summary of the project.
Thank you, Ada. That was very clear. So now I turn to Nicolas Graveline, who is Head of International Development at New Heat and who's representing the DMC project from France, but also linking to Croatia because that's where the project will be implemented. So, Nicolas.
Thank you. We are glad to see that the solar thermal solution have caught the attention of the Innovation Fund. It is the decarbonated heat solution which has the least impact on the environment. And it has, for example, it only uses a quarter of the surface that solar PV would use for the same energy output. It uses 1/20th of the land use that biomass would use for the same energy production. And it produces almost zero emission during the whole life cycle of the project. No particles, and it's very easy to recycle at the end of a 20-year or 40-year life. With the Decarbomalt project that we're presenting today, we will cover 54% of Bortmal, Croatia site useful heat. So 54% will be decarbonated thanks to solar heat. And in a second stage, we might even go up to 100%. Being selected in this round for New Heat is a great opportunity, as we are a small ESCO with 5 years experience in the solar thermal heat. We are suppliers of renewable heat solution and leader in solar heat for commercial use. With this particular project, we will partner with Bortmal, Croatia for 20 years, and this will offset 80,000 tons of carbon dioxide. So thanks to all at CINEA for putting the spotlight on the solar thermal solution. In this, you recognize that it needs to have a stronger focus. And at New Heat, with the solution we provide, we can decarbonize 25% of the energy consumption in Europe. And so we believe this technology needs to have more attention. And finally, we could see, from our point of view, a general weakness on the commitments of the countries for the COP26. We believe they don't align to a future which is livable for the future generation, and the commitments are weak, and so we believe the commitment will have to come from the private sector, and we are here to help you on that quest.
Okay, thank you, Nicolas. Your message was very clear as well. So last but not least, I would turn to Karel-Jozef Olfisch, who's Senior Project Director at Saint-Gobain, representing the BCP project from France. So please.
Yeah, thank you very much. And also Saint-Gobain, that's a very old company, is very honored for this awarding of the Innovation Fund grant, which was helping us to put forward this, I think, very nice project. So it's on a float plant, flat glass production plant in north of France, Aniche. There we are producing 600 tons per day of flat glass of a high quality for construction and for automotive. And you might know that many of this glass is afterwards coated so that its functional properties can contribute to thermal insulation of houses and also sun protection. And that's why, let's say, the flat glass contributes highly to the decarbonization of the building stock, notably on renovation, I would say. And what we can do here, this is a complex process, old process, float process, 600 tons per day, so large furnace, where we already had a lot of heat recovery and very nice energy efficiency. But since 10 years, our engineers were wondering whether we could also preheat the incoming raw materials. And so this never paid off, let's say. So it's really hard and it's expensive, but it brings us another 10% of this energy efficiency and the consumption of natural gas today of these float plants. And this is 7% of the CO2 emissions, which are 6,000 tons per year. So this, at the first view, might not be so much, but I think we have many, many plants around the world, in Saint-Gobain, but also the whole flat glass sector, even in Europe. It's 60 float plants only in Europe. So there's a nice opportunity on scaling that up. And it perfectly introduces this project into our decarbonization roadmap of the flat glass production. Because first of all, we work on energy efficiency. And this is a nice example for this. So we can do a big step change to reduce energy. We use more and more cullet, recycled glass, which will again then reduce energy. And then I think at the same time we have big projects to switch from carbonated fuels to hydrogen, green electricity, and so on. And that's why I think this perfectly fits, let's say, into our roadmap. And thanks again for this very good, I think, help for us to go faster.
Okay, thank you, Karl-Josef. That was a very clear explanation as well of your project, so thanks for that. I have a question for each of you, and I will start with you, Edda. The Silverstone project, already benefited from the EU Horizon programs for research and innovation. Now, the support that you will get now under the Innovation Fund for commercial scale deployment is an excellent example of synergies between the programs that we are managing in the agency. Now, what can the Commission and what can executive agencies as well in general do to make sure that your example is followed by others? And how can the EU financing across the innovation cycle help innovative low carbon technologies like yours to enter the market at commercial scale?
Yeah, I mean, I think with respect to what should be done so that others can sort of follow in our steps, I want to mention a few items. First of all, it is important that sort of the Commission and the executive agencies has sort of a pipeline of strategically timed calls that allows new ideas and technologies to move efficiently from low TRL level up to a high TRL level. So aligning calls time-wise in such a way that this sort of reduces the amount of time until new technologies are ready for market. And of course, once technologies are ready for market deployments or are at the highest TRL level, this is, a really challenging period because taking the first steps towards commercialization involves high risk, and the first movers that do take on high risk. And this is where Innovation Fund comes in, playing a very important role. But in my opinion, other schemes must also be in place because not every project and not all good ideas are lucky enough to receive support from the Innovation Fund. So something to catch those that are not so lucky, however that's implemented, would be great. And of course, then if we look at the challenge before us, we need to bring new technologies to scale rapidly, and this of course requires tremendous funding need. And so all the funds, the Innovation Fund, other funding schemes, they need to be big enough so that we are able to take enough new technologies to scale in the time we need. So those are sort of items at the top of my head. And then maybe just last but not least, continuing and maintaining the open and continuous dialogue that you do carry out very well, I must say, with all the stakeholders involved with the programs.
Okay, thank you. In particular, I would say the message on necessary means, I think that came in very well, thank you. Okay, then I move to Nicolas. The DMC project represents a turning point for the decarbonization of industrial processes. What do you expect to be the impact of your project on your company and on the others in your sector?
Thank you. Yeah, it is indeed a game changer to have solar heat at this scale in commercial use. And I think it will be a game changer for New Heat to have a first large-scale validation and also a validation from the market that this is possible and that the industry trusts the technology to take over a big share and almost 100%, possibly 100% of their heat production. It's a game changer too because it will allow through the Innovation Fund to have a competitive industrial production in Europe. And this is even even more so if whatever product which is decarbonated through our solution will not enter into competition with a product which would come from non-carbon market, a market which would not be submitted to carbon market. So here is also a pledge for us, I think, to see a larger scale, these projects at a larger scale. There needs to be a certain level of assistance of decarbonated heat production or any renewable in general, and to make sure that this trickles down to the embedded carbon in the different infrastructures and solutions which are put in place. We hear a lot at the moment that the solution for decarbonating Europe will come from electricity and hydrogen. And I think we have to be very careful with that to make sure that we collect all the carbon in the whole life cycle of the asset, to make sure that we don't compensate a short-term greenhouse gas emission strategy with a long-term energy or carbon-intensive infrastructure.
Okay, thank you. That was very clear as well. Then, Carl-Josef, a question for you. Your company is operating at the global scale. How important is the award of the Innovation Fund for your company? And how can the Innovation Fund projects best contribute to achieve our climate neutrality objective beyond the scale of individual projects supported by the fund?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I already explained, I think, that the Innovation Fund was really the trigger for this project. So we wouldn't have done it so early. So you might say now gas prices are very high. Perhaps we would have done it. So this is a normal mechanism. But at that time, it was clearly the trigger for us to do it and to make this important step, I think, towards decarbonizing our float glass process. And you might know that also the float glass process is very, very complex and sensitive. And we are implementing this technology in a running plant. The plant runs for 15 to 20 years without any interruption. And if you implement something which plays a role on the raw materials, it's very, very sensitive, and risky. Even this technology is proven in the container glass industry, but never has been implemented for flat glass for good reasons. And so now this is really the moment to do it. And if you ask, let's say, for more impact, it's clear. I explained, I think there are much more flat glass facilities in Europe and around the world. And even, let's say, this kind of technology of preheating bulk material, which is a bit critical, could also help other sectors to move forward, I think, in this heat recovery technologies.
Okay, thank you, Carl-Josef. That was very, very clear as well. And in fact, I would like to thank the three of you. I would like to thank the three of you for your valuable contribution. I think it was very useful. And what I retain in particular, what I see is three very motivated people who want to make their project a big success. And I think from our side, and I think from DG Klima, from Senia's side, we can only appreciate that. And so we hope that your project will be successful and that we can look at that together. So I think it's now time for the signing ceremony. So I would invite maybe first indeed Carl-Josef to get ready to get signed. So because I think it's a very historical moment, I think the very first contract that we signed for the Innovation Fund, and I think from our side together with Klima, we're really pleased that we can do that today at the same time as COP26 is ongoing. So I'm really looking forward to have this signatory event with the three of you and in the presence of Mauro. So I think we can move to the signing event. Congratulations. Okay.
So take that with me.
Nicholas?
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Edda. Congratulations. Edda.
Thank you.
All of you.
Thank you very much again.
We hope to see you again with more innovation.
Thank you as well for the excellent cooperation, I would say. We're looking forward, of course, from Minia's side to know how the projects are going, and together with Roman, the team, we will, of course, be there to support you and to follow things up. And we hope that you come back with good results so that you can be an inspiration for quite some others to come up with projects. So thanks again, and a lot of success from my side as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
And now I pass the floor to you, Mauro, for the second part.
Thank you. Let's do. Ladies and gentlemen, now that the ceremonial part of the event is over, we will move to a discussion with some key participants in this process. But before I do that, before I introduce them, the conclusion I draw from the presentation we heard from the three project proponents gives you an idea of how broad the scope of the innovation we need is. We had the Saint-Gobain project, which is about reminding us that the best energy is the one we don't use, and the best greenhouse gas emissions are the ones that we don't emit. And if you have to use energy, I think the carbon malt project is a clear example that you have to change the nature of the energy you use. And Silverstone brings us right to the end of the production chain. What do you do when you have produced CO2? You have emitted it, or you have to emit it. How do you handle it? And the ability to capture CO2 and instead of storing into caves where originally it came from, you can store it permanently in rock formations is a fantastic idea, which I think will change the nature of the debate on carbon capture and storage. That gives you an idea of the range of technologies that we need to look at if we want to be successful. But at the same time, none of us can do this alone. Partnerships are a key element, and one thing we've seen very clearly in the project that they have applied for the Innovation Fund is partnerships among different innovators or different parts of the technology chain. But the same applies to finance. Partnerships in financing clean innovation is also a key concept, and I'm very happy today to be able to have a conversation with three key actors in building partnership in how we can finance clean tech and its development. And this partnership cut across boundaries, they cut across nationality, they cut across geography. We have seen the signature by President von der Leyen, Bill Gates, and the President of the European Investment Bank, Werner Hoyer, of a memorandum of understanding to put in place the Catalyst Partnership. And I'm very happy to welcome here one of the people who've made that partnership possible, the Vice President for Europe of Breakthrough Energy, Ann Mettler, former colleague of ours, very good friend, and very happy to see you again.
Excellent. Good afternoon to Glasgow. Good afternoon, Mauro. Lovely to see you. And congratulations, first of all, to Edda and Nicholas and Emmanuel. I thought that was really inspiring. Maybe I'll just say a few words about Breakthrough Energy, which was, as you know, set up by Bill Gates pretty much exactly 6 years ago at the COP21. And in a nutshell, our mission is to support the innovations that will lead the world to net zero emissions. And what's important to understand is that our starting point is really the critical importance of clean technologies and delivering net zero emissions. I mean, essentially what we are talking about here. I always like to cite the IEA, which estimates that about 50% of the emission reductions needed to get to net zero by 2050 need to come from technologies that are currently at demonstration or prototype stage. So exactly the kind of projects that were presented in this session earlier. So building markets for these technologies and for these projects, and very importantly, generating demand, generating demand and putting them on track towards commercialization. That is what we now need to do. I don't know if the slide that I had submitted can now be pulled up, because it shows, I think, very nicely how we approach the innovation challenge, which is really, if you look here, we work across the innovation cycle. So from tech development via our fellows program, which is on the left-hand side, company building via our 2 billion venture fund, which you see here in the middle, and market scaling through our flagship program, the Catalyst program, which you just mentioned. And all are aimed at sort of bridging what I think are quite well-known valleys of death that can occur across this innovation cycle. And since we're here to speak about a Catalyst, let me just say, in a nutshell, because not everyone may be familiar with it, it is a first of its kind innovative blended finance vehicle that is designed to quickly scale and commercialize critical climate smart technologies, making them affordable across the globe. That's very important to us. I mean, if I had to put it in a few words, I'd say that Catalyst is about scaling fast to bring down the cost. Why is it necessary? Because even the best clean technology will have limited impact if it exists only in a pilot. So, and we know that it took around 4 decades to make other technologies, such as wind and solar, commercially viable. 4 decades. And that's, of course, time we do not have this time around. And bringing down the cost or reducing the green premium, as Bill likes to call it, that is, of course, necessary if we hope to get not only the advanced economies of the world to use these technologies, but particularly the middle and lower income countries. And that's, you already mentioned, the partnership that we have with the European Commission, with the European Investment Bank. We've created the EU Catalyst Partnership. It's a program in which we together will mobilize up to $1 billion or about 820 million euros to boost investments in a first step in 4 critical climate technologies, such as green hydrogen, long duration energy storage, sustainable aviation fuels, and direct air capture. And you mentioned it, the MOU was just signed at the COP, so it's wonderful to speak to you only 2 days later. But you also asked about sort of how Europe features in this global endeavor, which I think is very suitable given that this is a COP side event. And here, I really need to say that Europe is in many ways one of the key players because it is the only geography that really has a public policy program, the European Green Deal, the Fit for 55, that really puts us now on track towards net zero. This is very unusual, and I think we cannot take it for granted. I can tell you that when I look at my colleagues on the other side of the Atlantic, they don't have this. I mean, so our strong societal consensus that climate change is real, we need to do something to get to net zero, we need to work together, we need to develop these technologies. This is really what sets us apart globally and is a strength that we can build on. However, I think we also need to recognize that I mean, just Europe doing this is really sort of a drop in the ocean because we account for less than 8% of global carbon emissions. So it's very important that, yes, we get to net zero, but I would say that Europe's real contribution can be the development of these technologies so that not only we use it, but really the world can use it, and that it can do so in a way that makes it accessible, that makes it affordable, because this is what's holding back these technologies, especially in lower and middle and lower income countries. But let me say also a word about the Innovation Fund, if I may. And what I want to say is that this is a new financial instrument that was really urgently needed because it helps close sort of a really persistent gap in the innovation cycle. We all know that Europe is extremely strong in R&D, but where we have been less strong, and I know you've heard me speak about this many times, Mauro, is really in taking our ideas out of the lab into an environment where they can be validated and deployed. And I think you were absolutely right, Mauro, when you said in the beginning, we have the innovators. What we don't have is the finance for the innovators, but that is now changing thanks to the Innovation Fund. So I just want to say that this is a real value added, in my opinion. I believe that this funds projects that otherwise wouldn't be funded. And this is really important because a lot of traditional finance is way too risk averse, wouldn't look at these projects because they may take a long time to develop or simply because they are too risky. So in that sense, we at Breakthrough Energy, the Innovation Fund, the Commission, we're completely aligned in the sense that we need to see what is the transformative potential of these technologies and then need to invest at a time when maybe others won't. But I have no doubt that it will pay off over time. And I look forward also on behalf of Bill Gates, want to say very much look forward to the collaboration in the context of the Catalyst Partnership. And with that, I turn it back over to you.
Many thanks, Anne. Before we continue, let me remind everybody that we expect questions from the audience, and you can do so on the Slido platform. We will not have unlimited time, but we will try and pick at least some of the more interesting and perhaps provocative ones and pass them on to our participants. But Anne, just one last question for you. Bill Gates has been a very strong proponent of bringing public and private funds into a partnership. And it's not just a matter of accumulating money, pooling resources. Why has he been so convinced that this was necessary at this stage?
Honestly, I think that some of it comes out of his own experience when he started Microsoft, because he knows that really it's the government research and the government funding at the early stage of innovation, which can be absolutely transformational. So he and we and everything that we look at, we understand that the private sector alone can't do it, the public sector alone can't do it. As you say, this is about much more than just sort of joining up funding. This, because it's the public sector that sets the framework in which these technologies can function and hopefully thrive. And the private sector, I would say, also brings much more to the table than just funding. It brings an expertise, and I see it now because I'm much closer to it. It brings an expertise that simply is very difficult to access in the public sector, because the people who work at the technology frontier, such as the three that you just had speak on the panel earlier, they can be difficult to access. They can be difficult to find. So I think by joining up this sort of experience, bringing the strength of each side to the table, this is what brings about systemic change. And this is, at the end of the day, what this is all about. It's not just about numerous pilot projects, but it's really about tackling the climate crisis. And this is what we hope, bringing together really a new generation of public-private partnership through the Catalyst program, that this can really sort of move the needle.
Let me now turn to another player of this in this process. We've talked about partnership across boundaries, but the European Commission is trying to be a very active partner with many others. And you've heard Dirk Beckers and myself congratulate each other for the good cooperation between DG Clima and CINEA, but we're not the only actors in innovation in the Commission. So let me turn to Jean-David Marot, who is the Director of the European Innovation Council and the SME Executive Agency, who is another key player in this. And Jean-David, in particular, it would be helpful if our listeners would hear your views on the complementarity between different tools that the Commission is putting in place. And I mentioned earlier that innovation is not only about development, it's also about deployment. But again, Anne was underlying it as well. It all starts with developing the technologies, helping innovators develop the technologies, and then we need to help them deploy them. So, Jean-David, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mauro, and I'm of course delighted to be with you this afternoon. And first of all, my warmest congratulations for the launch of the first project of the Innovation Fund, the pioneers, as Dirk said a few minutes ago, and my whole congratulations to all of them. I couldn't agree more to what Anne said a few minutes ago. I mean, we are in Europe in a very paradoxical situation at a certain extent. We are able to generate excellent research, including emerging technologies that can change the world, but we remain with a number of weaknesses over the recent decades. Our capacity to move from lab to the market, first of all. And second of all, our capacity to accompany, in fact, our entrepreneurs, our innovators, in order to scale up quickly and to go quickly to the market and to penetrate this market. It's very systemic, in fact, in the way we are working today in Europe. And this is the reason why, at the level of the European Commission, as you know, we have decided 4 years ago to test new approach in order to complement a set of tools that already exist and that, of course, we intend to improve. I would like to to explain you in a few minutes, very quickly, the purpose of what is a European Innovation Council, because this is what it is about. The first things that we have to continue to do is to invest where we are strong, because we should not stop where we are strong, and in particular, to invest in our innovators at a very first moment of an idea from very low technology readiness level that could make a change in the future. And this is the purpose of one dimension of the EIC, which is called the Pathfinder, where we are supporting, in fact, advanced research that could lead to the emergence of new technologies that could have an impact, in particular regarding clean tech. But we have also to tackle the two gaps that I just mentioned a few minutes ago. This move, in fact, from the lab to the market by providing, in fact, support to our spin-outs, to our SMEs that are able, in fact, to host, in fact, this knowledge with the president. This is the purpose of the EIC transition scheme. And last but not least, we have to take risk in order to accompany our promising deep tech startup and SMEs. And this is the purpose of the EIC accelerator. And with a budget of 10 billion euro, which makes in fact the EIC the most important program within the current multi-financial framework at EU level, managed at EU level with EU money dedicated to innovation. We intend to contribute to these challenges. Just allow me here to highlight some specificities that are complementing, in fact, what will be done, in fact, by the Innovation Fund. Within the EIC accelerator, the main novelty, in fact, that we are introducing and that we have tested now for 1.5 years and that we have launched fully already in 2021 is the capacity not only to provide grants to our startup and SMEs, but also to invest directly in the capital of this company, to take risk together with other investors, because the purpose here is certainly not to crowding out private investors, but to attract them and to co-invest with them in these companies. And by the way, it happens that with Breakthrough Energy, we have one company in which we are finalizing a round in Sweden, but of course for reasons that you can easily understand, I cannot give you the name of this company, but it will be announced very soon. And which means that we will be able to invest up to 15 million euro, in certain cases more than 15 million euro, in order to do what Anne said a few minutes ago, to in fact reduce as much as possible the introduction in a market where you have a demand of these new technologies that can make a change. And this is absolutely new. I mean, it means that for the first time, together with private investors, we are ready at the level of the Union to take risks. But when I say the level of the Union, I'm not talking only about the European Commission. I'm talking also about member states, about regions, about promotional banks that are ready to accompany us, because this is a joint effort that we have to tackle here. The second point I'd like to insist on is that money is, of course, absolutely critical, but money is not enough. If we are not providing our innovators, our entrepreneurs, with the capacity to meet with the right people, with public procurers, private procurers, in order to validate a new technology also in this way, to have access to large corporates that are driving a particular sector in order to create relationship, to learn from people that have experienced the same path by mentoring and coaching, to give them the possibility also to participate to a number of fairs around the world and things like this. I mean, we will miss our target. And in this context, we have not only to provide financial means, but all this type of business acceleration services, I would call them this way. We will, and we are already providing this type of services to our beneficiaries in the context of the EIC, but we should not do it alone. I mean, we have to do it also with other partners that are ready to accompany us on this. We are now doing it also with our colleague of the European Institute of Innovation and Technology, because they are also, I mean, you have a number of promising startups that are emerging, and it would be, let's be very clear, stupid to duplicate the efforts. We should join our efforts in order to be more impactful, but we should do it also with other partners. And we are, of course, exploring the possibility to do it with a number of them. As the time is very scarce, I will conclude now by just telling you that, in fact, we have already in 2021 dedicated a budget of $250 million to clean tech, technology-oriented startup and SMEs, as well as universities, of course, and RTOs in the context of the EIC. And we intend to continue to do it in 2022 with the support of our member states in the context of our program committee very soon. And we will announce very soon, in fact, our work program for 2022. And we do believe that, and we are sure, that we will have common beneficiaries within the EIC, but also within the Innovation Fund, because what we should have as an objective is to ensure a kind of a fluid path towards our various instruments, together with the involvement and the support of private actors in the domain of investment, but also in other domains.
Many thanks, Jean-David. Ladies and gentlemen, let me now introduce a third participant who is going to bring us back to the question of private and public partnership of a very different kind, and bring also the dimension of other countries than Europe or the United States or the advanced industrialized nations. Susan Pedersen, who is the director of the UNFDTU, and UNEP, we all know, United Nations Environment Program. DTU is Denmark Technical University. Susan, welcome. Very happy to have you with us. And in your presentation, if you could also touch on one particular issue, which I think is crucial. Most developing countries are not real emitters. Some developing countries, the emerging economy, have as much weight as the industrialized nations, but many developing countries emit relatively little. At the same time, not only they are the prime victims of climate change, but how do we make sure that they don't develop along the same pattern that we have used, only to have it change it shortly afterwards? And the core to that is the question of energy. How do we support them to develop an energy system, which many of them desperately need, which is cleaner and more efficient than the one we are now trying to change? Suzanne, over to you.
Thank you very much, and hello to everyone from Glasgow, directly from the crux of the climate negotiations. I'm representing UNFDTU Partnership, and we are a science-based advisory group engaged in implementing UNEP's energy and climate strategy. And we mostly work to help emerging economies and developing countries in their low-carbon transition process. Getting back to your question, it is true that developing countries are often the main victims of climate change, but we are, of course, all hoping that they can leapfrog their development and not make the same mistakes as we have maybe done in Europe and elsewhere. And it's one of the items or issues that we can do is to try to help transfer and promote innovative technologies that are critical to our response to the climate crisis. Within the UN Framework Convention for Climate Change, UNFDTU, the role and importance of technologies has received clear and consistent support from parties to the convention for over 20 years, which is articulated in the technology framework under Article 10. And in order to enhance the ecosystems for the wider use of clean technologies for emerging economies and developing countries, UNFDTU's research and experience with supporting close to 100 countries in their UNFDTU technology needs assessments. It shows that there's a need to look at the structural factors that hinder the transfer and deployment of a clean technology, including regulatory policy or other features that define a given sector, as well as access to and the cost of finance. Because one of the things that we clearly see is that access to capital and investments remain the main challenge for many developing and most vulnerable countries. And we know that a lot of work can be done to help this, but we definitely also need to take good care of taking the local needs into account to make sure that we create the conditions for large-scale investments to enable larger flows of public and private capital. So if we look at the main bottlenecks faced by these countries, it's important to recognize that there's no one-size-fits-all technological solution or transition pathway, and that all technologies must be adjusted to the specific local, social, political, and institutional context. A positive example we've seen is small and medium-sized enterprises operating in the clean technology sectors in least developed countries. There has certainly been an creation or expanding of new funding pools and donor-led financing facilities that has had some success in stimulating the growth of commercial financing in the private sector, leveraged by financial innovation, which has enabled some technologies to move into the mainstream. But even if there are some positive trends, you could also say that the amount of financing that reaches SMEs in these countries continues to fall short of what is needed. Local projects and businesses offer often the lowest cost potential to deliver net emission reductions. So we see that there is a need to expand the provision of blended finance, combining various levels of risk-return investment with grant funding and technical assistance for SME project developers. But we think that there is a broad understanding on what we need to do in terms of technology development and uptake, but there's less clarity on the how. And we are at UNFDTU Partnership have launched together with the UN Climate Technology Center and Network CTCN and also the UNFDTU Secretariat a new publication on scaling up investment in climate technologies, drawing on years of research and country-specific technical assistance projects. And this publication that is out now brings together a collection of articles that provide real-world insights into these experiences. And we hope it will serve as inspiration for what works and what could work as we seek to scale up investment. I think finally, I would like to highlight that in order to have a complete range of solutions to reach a full transition to a low carbon development pathway, we need international technology transfer. This is one thing, but we also need local anchoring with local production, skills upgrading, and strengthening of local markets. If you take solar energy transition in Africa, this has been mostly driven by international companies exporting their clean technologies without very much local manufacturing or local skills development. So there is actually not so much local capacity that has been developed to maintain some of the solar PV panels and also produce them, dismantle them. In fact, we are doing research now that where we are fearing that you could say that the exhausted solar PV panels will be the next, let's say, waste crisis in Africa, basically piling up of equipment that are obsolete, etc. So involving the local actors and stakeholders is really important for a clean tech deployment because we do need to create also green jobs, local development, and also a just transition if we really want to help with a clean energy transition in least developed countries. The technologies are there, no doubt. I think the financing is certainly coming more and more, but we also need to consider the just transition aspects of the tech deployment. So thank you very much for having me here, and it's been great to discuss. Thank you.
Many thanks, Suzanne. Ladies and gentlemen, in principle, we would have run out of time, but I'm sure we can stretch it. I'm looking at my colleagues to pick up at least on a couple of questions in the audience. Would that be possible? 2 questions. Generous concession, thank you. I know how tight the schedule is. So, well, there's a question which goes straight to Anne. When can we expect the first project of the EU Catalyst Partnership to deliver results? Anne, it's a big question when it comes to timing, but over to you. I wouldn't dare second guess you.
So there will first have to be, we just signed the Memorandum of Understanding 2 days ago. The next step is that there will be a call for projects, and then these best projects will be funded and need to be chosen. So I cannot commit to anything, but what I can say is that we are eager to move forward quickly, and I have no doubt that the first projects at a minimum will be chosen by this time next year, hopefully sooner, and would then quickly get off the ground. Because if there's one thing I can say about our organization, it's very agile and it moves quickly. So we are very eager to get started. And needless to say that Europe was the first geography that we looked to for the Catalyst Partnership, and it was also the first agreement we concluded. So we are very committed, and it will be as soon as possible.
Many thanks, Anne. And the second question. That's an interesting one. And I'm tempted to throw it well, certainly to both Anne and Suzanne. Should it be the big oil and gas and industrial companies doing this innovation on their own? Why should the public pay for the pollution they have caused? I will refrain from giving my views on that and pass it on to our panelists, but all 3 are welcome to intervene. Suzanne, maybe you start.
Well, I think it's a very politically charged question, and I think in some ways we need to work with everyone, no matter who they are, what they represent, or whatever, because of course there's great innovation capacity, great engineering strengths, great skills in bigger companies that have operated for a long time. So I'm sure they can bring something to the sort of clean energy transition if they really put their minds and their resources to it. So I think the end may justify the means. I'm not sure, but certainly we shouldn't rule out working with players if they want to actually contribute. Thank you.
Thank you. And
I'm
Jean-David?
happy to say something here as well. I mean, essentially, what we are trying to achieve here is a new clean industrial revolution. And as Suzanne just said, we need to bring everyone on board. And I would say that at least for some of the emerging technologies, such as blue hydrogen, it will be critical to work together with companies like these. So I don't believe in sort of ostracizing, and we need to build a big tent where everyone can make their contribution. But we also need to be clear that we need to examine what really happens. So no greenwashing, we set the bar very high. But this will not be done without really sort of a broad church, I would say, and I believe that that would be the right approach.
Thank you. Jean-David, one last word.
Oh, I can only subscribe to what Susan and Anne said. I mean, we should work with everybody. I mean, by definition, innovation can emerge from anywhere. And in this context, I do believe that also these actors could play a key role. In the context of the EIC, I mean, we put the bar also very high because we have decided already to apply the taxonomy. I mean, I will not enter into the details here, but we are applying fully, for example, the do not harm principle in the selection of our project, which does not mean that at the end we have not seen this kind of actors submitting proposal. I mean, they have submitted proposal with a very particular target that is fitting with the policy objective of the union. So this demonstrates also that they could play a key role in this context if they are committed to.
Thank you, Jean-David. Ladies and gentlemen, that does bring us to the end of our event. I think you've seen a number of things that those who've participated are doing, the European Commission, the Union, in partnership with many others across the world. So keep watching what we are doing in practice. And there is a lot more than this around the world. There are many other actors in Europe and elsewhere who are participating in these initiatives. Watch for them as well. I think we need to a lot more attention to how we develop and use innovation if we want to achieve our climate objectives. So thank you for being with us and look forward to perhaps a next Clean Tech conference in person next year. Goodbye.